The biggest change in America in my 20 years of studying religion. Hi, I'm Britt Hartley. I'm an atheist spiritual director. I've been studying religion for 2 decades. I have a master's degree in theology with a focus in the future of American religion. The biggest change in religion since I started is not the wave of Christian deconstruction. People deconstructing the Christian religion or having a dark night of the soul is as old as Christianity itself. The biggest change is the gender gap in religious expression. When I started studying religion, it was generally true across the board that women were more religious than men. They reported that their belief in God was more important than men. When they were asked if their beliefs in God were important, they went to church more consistently, they prayed more, they read scriptures more. Whatever the marker of spirituality or religiosity was, women just kind of swept the field. And it was generally true, and people would say that women are more spiritual, or there are more women in church usually than men in pretty much any denomination. And then something started to shift. Christianity in America begins, especially in the 70s and 80s, to become a political entity. So in the 1980s, Jerry Falwell kind of Christianity, this evangelical pastor, he founds the Moral Majority, a political organization that mobilizes conservative Christians around social issues like abortion and gay rights and school prayer that were perceived threats to traditional family values. And they tried a few issues, and through trial and error, they really narrowed in on the abortion issue as the one that could help them gain the most political power. And this is a turning point where large segments of American Christianity become intertwined with in a way that you can't unintertwine with the conservative political ideology. So the Moral Majority and other similar organizations helped to solidify this alliance between evangelical Christianity and the Republican Party until they essentially became the same thing, framing issues like abortion and same-sex marriage as moral imperatives for the country to deal with. So for many Christians, this political activism became a way to protect what they saw as Christian America. The idea that the US had been founded on Christian principles, this is under threat by secularism and feminism and the liberal agenda. And as a result, politics became the tool to save the nation by enforcing moral values through legislation because they felt this threat. So this period also coincided with, larger cultural shifts such as their pushback to the sexual revolution and the civil rights movement, and just a general push away from secularism, which conservative Christians felt directly threatened their religious identity. So over time, for some, being Christian became more about holding certain political views, opposing abortion, supporting family values, aligning with free market capitalism, than it was about actually following the teachings of Jesus, about love and compassion and humility. And so the fusion of faith with nationalism and right-wing politics intensified, making Christianity a cultural and political identity in America. And so Jesus' teachings on poverty or caring for the marginalized or nonviolence were overshadowed by concerns about maintaining the social order and fighting enemies of the faith and supporting the policies that aligned with the conservative worldview. So this fusion was reinforced by Christian media networks and political lobbying and high-profile leaders who preached a version of Christianity that was closely tied to patriotism and capitalism, further alienating those who didn't share these political views. So as Christianity becomes more politicized, many people, particularly the younger generations, began to feel that the faith no longer represented the inclusive, compassionate teachings of Jesus. So the reasons that young people are leaving include hypocrisy and moral inconsistency, especially for young people. It's especially watching how Christians dealt with the issue of gay marriage. And many see the political activism of Christian leaders as hypocritical, especially when religious leaders support politicians who do not embody Christian values. Trump would be a good example of that. And this has been more pronounced in this era with Trump, when evangelical support for a president known for his personal immorality, clashed with the moral rigor they demanded of others. And so all of a sudden it became about, it doesn't matter about Trump's moral character as long as he's on our side and as long as it's about, political conservatism. And especially young people see that as a great hypocrisy. So number 2, exclusionary and judgmental stances. So the church's stance on LGBTQ rights, gender roles, other social issues being seen as intolerant in an increasingly diverse and pluralistic society. These views often conflict with the message of Jesus as someone who welcomed people. Number 3, focus on power and control. The association between Christianity and political powers has made many feel that the church is more interested in controlling social policy than actually fostering spiritual growth and development. And this is driving many young people away who see Christianity as being co-opted by a desire for power than actual spiritual authenticity. Number 4, just irrelevance. Younger people in particular find that the issues that the church focuses on, such as abortion and gay marriage, don't resonate with their primary concerns like climate change and racial justice and wealth inequality and poverty. The perception that Christianity is just out of touch with the modern world has led many to leave. And then last, for reasons that young people are leaving, is religious trauma, disillusionment. Many have experienced negative, judgmental, or controlling aspects of religious environments or are learning about it from TikTok from other people who have religious trauma. But the thing that was, even though Gen Z is leaving religion for the first time, it was really young women over the young men who were more likely to leave and also more likely to reject conservatism that was also wrapped into Christianity so much that they became intertwined. So this graph to me is the most shocking thing that has happened since I started studying specifically Christianity in America, because the gap politically between young men and young women is more drastic than we have ever seen in human history. And that leads us to this data, that Gen Z men are going to church more than women. Gen Z men, who tend to be more politically conservative, are actually increasing their involvement in traditional religious settings. This shift suggests that men are using religion as a way to reinforce certain social and political views that align with a more conservative worldview. As the broader culture leans towards gender equality and inclusivity, some men see traditional religion as the last bastion of stability and order, preserving the values that they believe are under threat. So we're seeing this dynamic where women are more likely to be liberal and unpacking patriarchy, and that was always at least a little bit true, but not in the gap that we were talking about. And men are now more likely, young Gen Z men are more likely to be politically more conservative and now more religious in traditional religion. So as more young women embrace feminism and challenge patriarchal structures in society, they find it increasingly difficult to align with churches that continue to enforce these rigid gender roles. So these churches often oppose women's reproductive rights, maintain male-dominated leadership, support traditional family structures that many women find outdated or oppressive. And so men will feel threatened and will often say on social media, I want a trad wife. I went to church to find a wife, and where are all the good women? They're all gone. And now you have men on TikTok saying you have to go overseas now to find a real submissive woman because the power dynamic has shifted and men no longer get what they used to in the world by just being a man.
Oh, have you heard of passport bros?
What is a passport bro?
Okay, passport bros are men that are so fed up with Western women because we're all apparently so woke and so terrible and Western women don't want to be wives that they are now going to other countries to find wives.
That's like which countries?
Southeast Asia, the Philippines, the Dominican Republic.
So where are the women going? We have this huge surge of women becoming more liberal, leaving organized religion. Where are they going? They're going to paganism. Many are turning to alternative spiritualities like paganism, witchcraft, new age practices, crystals, astrology, tarot. And these movements emphasize female empowerment and connection to nature and spiritual practices that are often free from dogma and hierarchy that you find in traditional religions. And for many women, this path offers a more liberating and inclusive way to explore spirituality that doesn't come with the baggage of patriarchal control. And this shift away from traditional religious institutions toward more fluid, individualized, nature-oriented, feminine-oriented spiritual practices signals this significant cultural transformation. It reflects not only a rejection of certain political ideologies embedded in Christianity, but also a broader desire for spiritual freedom and authenticity and spiritual power and equality, values that resonate deeply with young women seeking something beyond the confines of organized religion. So religion is really this political power struggle where the men long for the days when the world revolved around them and the structure of the world supported them. And women are moving on to forms of political and religious involvement that more fully represent them as full people. And so the three reasons why Christianity getting into politics makes me sad, because this is not good for anyone. First, what does this mean for the person who is actually inspired by Jesus? Like, I know people who are concerned with the Christian empire, but they really have become better people by wrestling with the parables of Jesus, to love outside your tribe, to not judge others, to not charge people interest and take advantage of them, to flip tables of the institution, to love like the Good Samaritan, to cut holes in roofs for the marginalized people to be healed. Those people, those really Jesus people, can't get on board with Christian nationalist fundamentalism, but they also see it as, inauthentic for them to leave Christianity entirely, because at the very least they see Jesus as a wise mystic teacher, and this is their access to a spiritual, moral, meaningful life. And so what I've noticed in the past couple years is these people often call themselves followers of Christ rather than Christian, or they will say, I'm Christian, but not like one of those Christians. One Christian that I follow today is Richard Rohr, who says things like Trump is a stain on Christianity for decades to come. And the real Christians, the ones who are really trying to follow Jesus, I feel like, are the ones who are getting persecution from their own institution because they are at odds with their own institution. If you are doing Christianity right today, the persecution doesn't come from the world. The world doesn't mind loving people. It really doesn't. Even if they don't believe in Jesus, but they just see that believing in Jesus has made you so loving and kind of a person, the world doesn't mind that much. If you're doing Christianity right, you'll be at odds with the institution itself. You'll either have left your congregation, or you're having trouble with your congregation, or you've been excommunicated. This week alone, my doctorate professor, Thomas Ord, was excommunicated from the Church of the Nazarene for his support of gay rights. My friend Nemo the Mormon was a Mormon who just got excommunicated. And that sucks, because it truly means that the best Christians will debate another day whether Mormons are Christians. But the ones who are really trying to do it right are ones who are now lacking a spiritual home, because Christianity no longer represents what was good and what was good about their spiritual belief. It also makes me sad because it makes preserving anything good out of Christian culture really difficult. Ayan Hersili recently converted to Christianity after being a stalwart atheist. She's really the fifth member of the New Atheist of the Apocalypse movement. She was supposed to be at this meeting. She's an outspoken advocate against Islam, but essentially she says that she sees nothing in secularism that is going to be able to stand up to political religions, the rise of Islam, the rise of nationalism and fundamentalism, and Christianity is then our best bet. And one of the best arguments for religion is that because it co-evolves with us, it can continue to do so. So many people argue, I think successfully, that it may be faster to adjust religion to what we need it to be: third spaces, community, service, moral education, story, art, language, the transcendent. We just want it without the sexual abuse and dogma and requirement of belief in the supernatural. It may be faster to get there by adjusting religion than it is to build that from scratch. And it's secular Jews who lead in this conversation, because they've been able to keep all the good stuff, all the culture, and in America specifically, unless you're in a very specific kind of Jewish community, you're not really required to believe in anything. It's not unusual to have an atheist rabbi in New York City doing a bar mitzvah just as a cultural rite of passage. They're an old religion that has valued conversation, and so it's been able to shift and still offer something meaningful in modern times without the requirement of belief. But Christianity becoming an empire in America makes it very difficult for us to have any positive culture, because for white people, specifically for white people like me who don't know where they come from anymore, They don't know what their rituals were before their family was Christian. What is white culture without Christianity?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Pipe down, bitch. Pipe down.
And it would be a lot easier to be a cultural Christian, as Richard Dawkins proclaims to be, where you can still benefit from this shared history and these holidays and some of the values that come out of it. But when there's this heightened political environment that says you're either fully on board with Christian, Trump, conservative fundamentalism, nationalism train, or get out, it makes it very difficult to claim any space anywhere in between. And that makes it hard to preserve the positive things about cultural Christianity that could be good for society or individuals. It really makes it all or nothing. And the last thing that makes me sad, because when Christianity is an empire fighting for political power and even a theocracy, now secularism and atheism and humanism, we have to spend all of our time keeping religion out of the public sphere, out of science classrooms, etc. And it means that we can't devote more time to actually building things in its place. There is so much work to be done to provide people with better tools and better support and more communal support than religions, but we can't do any of that when we're just trying to keep the country from going full Handmaid's Tale, and that hurts everyone. Is this the future of religion in America? Pagan, witchy women and conservative Christian men. What's happening is that religion is now the battleground for what really is a political battle and a power struggle. And that makes it worse for everyone. And why is it a political battleground instead of just a religion? Because Christianity chose to get him to bed with politics, which is how we get the worst of Christianity. We get the Handmaid's Tale, fundamentalist, political, nationalistic cult of Christianity. And Gen Z women are not on board with this because of the political gap between conservative men and young women. So the future is secular, new age, pagan women and men returning back to church to hold on to their power and relevance and what they see as social stability. So when I first started studying religion, we did not have a gender gap like that. Women were always more religious than men in almost any religion in America. But when Christianity got into bed with politics and women were deconstructing patriarchy at the same time, this gap started to widen. And now religion is a political battlefield between men and women. And it didn't have to be that way. It's not that way in other countries, even in other Christian countries. But Christianity decided that when they doubled down on politics and made the religion more about politics. And they chose that when they also weren't able to meet modern women and recognize the ways in which patriarchal religions are made for men by men. So now the future of American religion is Gen Z is liberal women and Gen Z men are conservative, more often going to church men. And that's going to be a fascinating dynamic to watch.